Hi, wee Bob here, and rainy days in Scotland are a frequent occurrence. So today I will teach you how to draw this girl and her dog. In our case this is Dug and Bree from the storybook that I created a few years back, and I've featured it in my past two videos. So let's get started. This method can be done in traditional art as well as multiple digital art applications such as Krita, Sketchbook, but I'm going to be teaching it in Rebelle 5 today. But I'm going to show the results of Sketchbook and Krita a bit later on and during the process. So step 1, first off we get our piece of paper. So the brushes, I've used three main brushes: a watercolour brush, a fountain pen to do the sketching, and a blender. The blender is sort of the watercolour brush as well, but you need to click a different button for that. We can set the amount of paint that we use in our brush on the left hand panel as shown. This we can add paint by using opacity, we can add water by using the water, and we can change the size, which helps us not have to change brushes the same way we would have to do in traditional art. Step 3, so we start sketching our drawing using big shapes. I have stuck to triangles to capture the big shapes. If using real paper you want to sketch lightly, in digital art we will lower the opacity of the layer using the slider on the right in the layers panel. In Rebelle 5 we have this line smoothing tool. It also exists in Sketchbook and I haven't found it in Krita yet, but I'm pretty sure it'll be in there as well, which is similar to pulling a brush, giving us time to guide the line where we want to go, and it gives us that smoother finish. We can then create a new layer or sketch on top of our light sketch and start again, sketching lightly the more detailed image of our girl using the big shapes to help us to know how to do that, to draw the coat, the hood, the face. Just think in shapes and keep trying until you get a look that you're happy with. I've done this 5 times and ended up with 5 different looking drawings, which I will show you throughout this process. Once we have done our basic sketch, we are then going to consider our colours. All we need is an aqua green, a yellow, a red, a brown and a black. Step 6, I decided to go with the wet on dry watercolour technique, and I laid down a green around the big shapes that I had created. In Rebelle 5 we want to keep our opacity or paint loading lower to make the green colour light. As we watch along to the Krita version of this drawing, if you've got value from this video, please remember to hit that wee like button. It really is appreciated, as are all the comments, etc. Cheers everybody, and let's go on further in this drawing. In Rebelle 5 we can pause the watercolour simulation until we are ready to use the watercolour effect. It doesn't work in real time, similar to what traditional art would do, where you can push the colour around, and each time we touch the page in Rebelle 5 the simulation pauses, which doesn't really lend itself to a kind of normal feeling of drawing. The pause button is on the right. Once we get the green to how we want it to look, we can let the paper dry, or in Rebelle we can use the drop down menu as shown. We take the colour yellow and we start to fill in the little raincoat on both Bree and Dug. Notice I am still using the wash brush, but in digital art we can change the size of the brush at the touch of a button. You will need a smaller brush to do this more detailed work. Using a brown colour we can start to show where the light would hit if the sun was coming from this general direction, shadowing below the hood, behind the arm, etc. I then went on to the skin tone to use on the face, and we can get that by mixing a red and brown with white. In Rebelle, if we mix with a blank part of the canvas, white is added to that colour, so you don't need to go get white, you just mix on a blank part of the canvas. We then paint the face and hand. We may need to add more paint to our brush to get a solid colour. It depends on the look you're trying to achieve. In Rebelle and other digital software, this can easily be done on a new layer, which then takes you away from worrying about interfering with that background green colour. I'm trying to do this in a kind of more traditional way, just to make this universally applicable if you're doing this through traditional art or digital art. We can then use one of the darker skin tones to give some shape to our face by putting a small amount of that under the chin and under the nose area. In Rebelle it is easier to use a fountain pen or the dip pen to do the finer details such as the hair, the eyes, the mouth. The eye is just a small smiley face to show it closed. The smile is just a wee smiley face as you would draw one. For the blushing I just mixed a red and a white to get the pink or blush colour. I decided to add a wee bit more colour to Dug's wee rain jacket by adding a darker yellow, which can be obtained by mixing yellow and brown. Below the two characters we're going to have a shadow, and the shadow is going to be more vibrant, closer to the person, and the clouds also casting a shadow which will have a lesser effect on the grass. So Using our dark green, we can mix brown or black to get that darker green colour. We paint around the characters, but it doesn't need to be too precise, so don't worry too much about it. One of the biggest tricks in Rebelle is to use a blender brush icon, and this works really similar to real life when you wet your brush without putting colour on it, and you can push the colour around. Just check that your opacity is low and the water is high. Play around with the setting to see what works for you. In Rebelle we can see the water layer by clicking on the droplet, and then we can dry areas we don't want to be affected by the simulation, similar to dabbing a real watercolour painting to soak up water in areas that we don't want the colour to flow. Once the simulation is unpaused, we can also use a tilt tool to tilt the paper and make the colours run to obtain different effects. Adding details to our character, we can either leave our characters as they are, or in my case, I outlined the face with a darker skin colour and added more shadowing to the hooded area. Start adding the detail to the cloud, the face with the two wee eyes and a wee smiley face and some freckles. Make sure your paper is dry or simulation is on pause, otherwise we end up with a melted eyeball. And we add some rosy cheeks using the pink colour that we mixed earlier. With digital art, we've got this fantastic ability to change our painting near the end. The girl's head wasn't tilted enough, as I mentioned earlier when we were doing the sketch. So I used the digital art ability to cut, rotate and resize the character. Always an added advantage of digital art over traditional art. So now we're just doing the final details, then playing around with the watercolour simulation in Rebelle 5. If you want to see a tutorial in Krita, please check out the video up in the corner. Otherwise, thanks for watching and Wee Bob is out.